Hi, I'm Roxanne Richardson, and this is Technique Tuesday. In this week's Technique Tuesday, I'll be demonstrating the Balbriggan Sock Heel. This was a sock heel that was very commonly used for centuries, but really kind of disappeared in the early 20th century. In most cases, a sock heel is worked using half of the total number of stitches for the sock. So if you have 64 stitches, you would use 32 for the heel. This is true in general for the Balbriggan heel, but there are some exceptions. The Balbriggan heel itself requires a multiple of 4 stitches. So I'm going to demonstrate using this swatch that has 32 stitches. So it's simulating a sock with 64 stitches, and I've got a 32 stitch flap. Later on, I'll explain how to handle a sock where half the stitches are not a multiple of 4. And I'm also going to explain how to set up the heel shaping for other stitch counts that you might have for the heel, like 36 or 40. But right now, I'm going to go right through the process as if you have a 32 stitch sock heel. So after you divide your stitches in half so that you have your heel stitches, that is a multiple of 4, you knit the heel flap for as many rows as you have heel stitches. So I have 32 heel stitches, so I knit for 32 rows, and you do not slip the selvage stitch like you normally do with more contemporary sock heels. Just going to leave those selvages just as they are. You're going to knit them on the right side and purl them on the wrong side. Once you have your flap complete, now we're going to divide the heel stitches into 4 sections, and so we're going to need 3 markers for that. Locking stitch markers are going to be the easiest because you can just put them on or take them off as you need. So the first one is going to go in the center. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Just confirm that I actually have 16 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Yes. So the way I'm going to divide the rest of these is I want to have 6 stitches from the edge. From each edge, I'm going to place another marker. So 2, 4, 6. And this number will vary depending on how wide your heel flap is. So I'll explain how to figure that out later on. 2, 4, 6. So I have my 3 markers, and now I can do the heel shaping. So the way that the heel is shaped is that you're going to be doing 4 decreases altogether. You're going to be doing them inside the markers, and they're going to be pointing toward the center of each of these sections. So you're going to do an SSK, which is a left-leaning decrease here, and a knit 2 together, which is a right-leaning decrease here. And then you'll do the same over here. You'll do an SSK on this side of the marker, and you will do a knit 2 together on that side of the marker. And again, you are not slipping your selvage stitches. So you knit to the marker, you slip the marker, and then you work your left-leaning decrease. I cut a little, snagged a little something there. So I'm going to do an SSK. You can do an SKP if you prefer. And then you knit until you have 2 stitches before the marker. And then you do your knit 2 together. You're going to slip the marker. And again, you're going to do SSK first. I'm splitting that stitch. There we go. And then when you are 2 stitches before the next marker, you will do knit 2 together. Slip the marker, knit to the end. Now on your wrong side rows and your purl rows, you're just going to purl all the way across. You're going to slip the markers when you come to them. Now you're going to repeat these right side rows. Every time you have a right side row, you're going to work a decrease right after this first marker and right before the second one. So SSK, knit two together, SSK, knit together. You're going to keep doing that until you just have 2 stitches remaining in the middle, the result of the final SSK and the result of the final knit two together. And you're going to be purling your wrong side rows. So when you do that final right side row where you end up with 2 stitches between these markers, then you're going to stop and you're going to be ready for a purl row. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do all my decreases, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. All right, so I'm just finishing up this final row. I've taken this marker out. You can see I've got my 6 plain stitches here, and then my decreases are all that's left from between those 2 sections. I've got my middle marker still here, and I've got these 2 decreases, and then I've got my last final 6 stitches. So now what we're going to do is we are going to purl across just to that marker. So just half of a row, we're going to purl across. And then we can take this marker off. And now what we're going to do is we're going to join these 2 halves together using a 3 needle bind off. So we've got the wrong side facing us. We're going to turn so that we have the 2 halves with the right sides together. And then we're going to do a 3 needle bind off. So the way a 3 needle bind off works is you enter the stitch on the front needle, you enter the stitch on the back needle, and then you work them together. So I usually like to let one off the needle, come through the one in front, and then let that one off the needle. You can pull them both through at the same time. I tend to not have as good luck doing that, but you can do it. And once you have 2 stitches on the right hand needle, you're going to do a bind off. So now you've just got the 1 stitch. It's just your standard 3 needle bind off, and then again I have 2 stitches on the needle, so I use one of these needles to help pull it over. So then I'm back to 1, and so on. This is the way heels were done centuries ago, and the way that sock toes were completed too. They didn't tend to graft these. They just did a 3 needle bind off. You didn't have to cut the yarn, find a needle and thread it. You could just continue working without cutting the yarn or wasting any yarn. Just using the needles that you already had in your hand. So now when you have the last stitch, you just leave it. You're not cutting the yarn. And this is the point where you're going to pick up stitches so that you can begin working in the round again. But you can see how those 4 decreases create this kind of band that goes across this way. And then you have decreases along the back of the heel. So it creates a fairly 3-dimensional curve that fits the back of your heel. So next I'll show you how to pick up the stitches along the edge. All right, I'm switching to a different swatch for reasons. But I just want to show you when you are finishing the 3 needle bind off. Go through the last ones. And I pass that stitch over. I have this 1 stitch left on the needle. So I've got the wrong side facing on the outside now. I'm going to flip this way. And now I'm going to start picking up stitches. So I had 32 rows on the heel flap, then I knit another 8 or 9 rows for the shaping. I want to pick up 3 stitches for every 4 rows. And because I did not slip these stitches, they're going to be tiny. So you're going to really have to look at them. But that will give me in total about 29, 30 stitches that I'm going to pick up along this particular edge. Then I will work across the instep stitches that are held, and then I will pick up another 29 or 30 stitches down the other edge, the other flap edge, and then I can return to working in the round. So when the stitches are tiny, you have to really look. You're looking for that V shape of the stitch on the edge, and you're going to go right through the center of it. You're not picking up stitches the way you would for in another situation, like for a button band or something. You're going to pick up right through the center of the stitch. Grab the working yarn and pull it through, and then you're going to look for the next edge stitch, go through the center, pick that one up. Now I've picked up 2, and now I want to go through the third one, pick that up. But I'm going to skip the next one because I'm only picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows. So I want to skip this next one right here, and then but go through this one. And I'm going to do that all the way up. So out of the 38, 39 rows, I will end up with about 29 or 30 stitches on the needle. So once I pick that up, I will return. All right, so I finished picking up along this edge. I think I ended up with maybe 32 stitches. I have the one I had after the bind off, and then I think I picked up 1 extra stitch here. So I want to keep the edge of the heel flap where I'm going to be working the gusset separate from the instep stitches, just to know where those are. So I'm just going to put a marker on here. Now I'm going to work across these instep stitches, and then I'll put another marker, and then I'll pick up along this edge. And so I'll come back after I have done that. So I ended up picking up something like 29 stitches on the second flap. So the stitch that was remaining after the 3 needle bind off, I am going to assign to this flap over here, so that I now have 30 on this half. So I have 30 on here, I have 31 over here, that's okay. When I do my gussets, I'll just decrease an extra stitch on this half. But what I wanted to show you was, because we picked up through the center of those selvage stitches, what we can do on this first round up to the marker is just knit these stitches through the back. That'll just help tighten things up a little bit. And again, we're just going to do it for this round, and we're only going to do it on the stitches where we picked them up along the edge. We're not going to do it across the instep stitches. So I'll be doing this all the way up this edge of the flap, and then down the other edge. And then once this first round is complete, then we can start working gusset decreases like you would for any heel flap and gusset construction, where you'd work a decrease here, maybe 1 stitch. So when you have 3 stitches remaining, you'd work a decrease that points that way. That's knit 2 together. And on this half, you'd work the first stitch, and then you'd work a decrease that points left, which is an SSK. And you do that every other round until you are down to the number of stitches that you want for your foot. The formula is usually that you'll have the same number of stitches for the foot that you had for the ankle, but not everybody's feet are built that way. Some people have skinnier ankles than feet, or skinnier feet than ankles. So you might want to stop your decreases early if you have a big ball of foot, or you might want to keep doing them if you have a narrow ball of foot relative to your ankle. But that is the Balbriggan heel. It's an old-fashioned heel. It was used for hundreds of years. So it's something to try if you like trying new types of sock techniques to see what you think of it. Or if you are doing like historical costuming and you want an authentic type of sock heel, this would be a good heel to do for whatever sort of stockings that you're knitting. All right, so I want to explain how you set up the heels, how you place the markers if you have a different number of stitches than 32, just in general how it works. Because you have a multiple of 4 stitches, you're dividing into 4 sections. You're not dividing them exactly equally. The idea is that by the end, you will have very close to half of the stitches that you started with when you do the 3-needle bind-off. So if you have 32 stitches, the first thing you're going to do when you figure out how to divide things up is you're going to subtract the 4 stitches that are the decreases. So you'll have 28 stitches. And then you want to divide them into 4 sections. Now these 4 sections have to have an even number of stitches because you are decreasing down until you just have 2 remaining. So if you have an odd number like I do here, then what you do is you borrow a stitch from the edge and you add it to that center stitch so that you actually have 8 here and 8 here. And now you take those 4 stitches that you subtracted earlier and you add them back into these 2 sections here. So that that's how we ended up with 6, 10, 10, and 6. And by the end, we will have had 8 stitches on each half, which is 16, and that's half of what we started with. So let's start with a different number. Let's say we had 36 stitches. Well, we subtract out the 4 stitches that will be the decreases, and we have 32. We divide this into 4 sections. We can do that 8 into each of those sections. And now we take those 4 stitches and we add them to here. So we have 8, 10, 10, and 8. Now let's say we have 40 stitches. So we subtract the 4, we have 36, and again, we have an odd number in each of those sections. So we need to borrow one. That becomes 8, and this becomes 10. And then we add our 4 decreases stitches back into here. So we have 8, 12, 12, and 8. And the stitches we'll have left at the end is 20, which again is half of what we started with. So what happens if you have a stitch count where when you divide the stitches, you don't have a multiple of 4. So let's say you had 68 stitch sock, and so you would have 34 and 34. You need to have either 36 or 32. You can go up or down on the heel and just have the extra ones on the instep. So you could do it 36 and 32, or you could do it 32 and 36, whichever one works for you. If you have something like 78 stitches, then you'd have 39 and 39. That one's a little easier. Just go right up to 40 and down to 38. Because that one's, it's real obvious which rounding which way you should do. But if it's in the middle, just pick one and see how it works for you. If you're interested in experimenting with different sock heels and sock toes, I have a lot of videos that you might be interested in. This is the entire playlist of all of my sock videos, and this one down here is focused just on heels. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below, or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rox Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.